Man, I've been with the greatest. Raymond Beadle, Don Perdome. I've heard Perdome's name so many times tonight, I think I'm gonna be sick. But you know he's my hero, right behind you, Garlits. Don't worry, this is being videoed. If you don't hear me, Garlits, I'll have you a tape later. $9.95 is what I get for this little deal.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Inside Drag Racing's coverage of the 2015 Induction Ceremonies presented by Lucas Oil. Let's get right to the ceremony where Hall of Famer Ted Jones is introducing the first inductee, Lee Edwards.
Let's just tell him, get the biggest motor you can build. Build it as big as you can. Put it in the car. We're not even going to P&G it. We don't care how big it is. Make it weigh 2,350 pounds and bring it on. 2 4-barrel carburetors and gasoline. Well, it was a big success. It went over very well. Obviously, the cars flew. There was one guy that suddenly started winning with, of all things, a Chevrolet. No factory backing of any kind, but was very popular with the fans. Well, meanwhile, this caught the attention of some of the racers that were still struggling with 2,800-pound cars and everything, and they said, gee, those guys are flying over there. That looks like a lot of fun. It'd be easy to win. They came over. Some of those racers ran up against one guy that caused a problem because he had figured out how to take a stock engine. These weren't aftermarket engines, okay? A stock Chevrolet engine and make it real big. So, ladies and gentlemen, long overdue, into the Hall of Fame, please welcome a guy that I think Ralph Hamilton, the announcer, first coined the term, the General Lee Edwards.
I quit racing, I guess it was 1980 or something. A old boy named, what was his name? Rob. He's over at one of them tables somewhere. We went to hunting, we killed everything that we could see. Grizzly bears, moose, elk, gray goose. A whole lot of gray goose now, I'm telling you. But we had fun.
Edwards? Where in the hell you at, Edwards? I was there. I saw it. I saw the day. I was 16 years old. It ain't like I'm a kitten. I'm 65 going on 100. Garlits, there ain't enough Viagra for me. Good luck, son. But I know, and you promised me since that night, where in the hell were we? Huntsville, Alabama. You told me an alien would get me, and that sumbitch ain't showed up yet. Unless it's Matt Hagen, that could be.
Cheryl Greer, one of my favorites going into the Hall of Fame tonight. He got his start in a car just like this. It wasn't a funny car, but let me tell you, there wasn't any funny cars then. What caught that name going was they would move these wheels forward to get more traction on the back, and somebody said, that's a funny looking car. And that was the beginning of funny cars. And then they escalated from that to injectors and then blowers, and that's what you have that started the thing today.
Cheryl and our team in 1974 went to Ontario Motor Speedway to run the World Finals. And Cheryl actually was leading the first ever World Championship by 1 round over Don Snake Perdome. And on Saturday of that event, Cheryl actually qualified but had a huge motor explosion and he ended up in the hospital. I said, look, show us the car, let's see the car. We can fix the car if you get Greer out of the hospital. The rest is sort of history. My team, Paul Smith's team, Steve Montrelli, and Cheryl's team went back to LA. We disassembled the car, made the necessary changes to the motor, put a new motor together actually. The first round, he raced Leroy Chatterton. Greer ran it to the 1,100-foot mark in low gear, drove around Chatterton, won the round, but blew the car to smithereens in the lights. NHRA came over and said, we can't wait any longer, we got to run the second round. So they ran the second round, and lo and behold, Dale Poldy beat Prudhomme, and Cheryl Greer, a totally unknown, totally unfunded, just an independent guy, hardcore drag racer, became the NHRA's first ever world champion in Nitro Funny Car.
You know, music was a big part of everything because we didn't have satellite radio. We didn't have, you know, you get so far out on the road, you'd run out of radio stations, so we'd jam in an 8-track. Well, so it could be Jim Croce. We had every truck driving song you could think of. And then I had my oldest brother, Rusty, so we had the Allman Brothers and Stillwater and Marshall Tucker and all this good stuff, and you needed that stuff to keep you awake, to keep going. So, and my dad really liked music, and I'm going to do something a little bit different. And I'm no musician by any means, but I come up with this little deal. He liked for me to play for him. And he laughed a little bit louder as he would yell up at the band. Play a train song, pour me one more round. Make 'em leave my faucet on the day they lay me down. I am a runaway locomotive out of a one-track mind, and I'm booking me a match race anywhere I find.
I didn't realize the love in this room. And my girls, you saw what Cheryl Greer's son did. He stood up, he offered his daddy. When I'm gone, I expect my girls, Courtney, Brittany, stand up, stand up. I expect you on this stage to sing about your daddy. He was drunk the night my ma got out of prison.
This edition of Inside Drag Racing is being brought to you by ARP, the world leader in racing fastener technology. Precision Turbo, the world's foremost manufacturer of high-performance aftermarket turbochargers. Aeromotive, we know it, we race it, we live it. And by Hidman Headers, proud to say, made in the USA.
Our next inductee into the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame is Jerry Gwynn. Now, probably a lot of you don't recognize that name because he did things back before most of you were even born. 1969, he won Super Eliminator World Champion with this very car. But you probably know him as the father of Daryl Gwynn.
And I wish my daughter could be here tonight. Believe it or not, she's 16 years old. It's really, really hard for me to swallow. I need a drink, actually. She is, she's getting ready for college. She's taking her SATs while we're here. She's got some tests going on at school, and I really, really wanted her to be here. But I'll tell you what happened yesterday that just got me so blown away that I had to write this speech down because I had this whole thing in my head until she pulled this one yesterday. I came home from work and she was laying by the pool. It was a beautiful day yesterday, and I went out on the patio to see her, and she says to me, "Dad, what are you going to end up doing with this thing?" And she was pointing to my pool lift. My friend Mark Miner made me a pool lift so that, and you can imagine, it looks like a cherry picker, and it's got these cables hanging off of it, and it's got hooks on it. And I said, "Why, honey?" She says, "That thing looked like it come out of the movie Field, what's the name of the movie? 50 Shades of Grey." And I'm like, "Are you me? What did you just say?" I haven't even seen the movie. And she's describing this lift with these chains, with these hooks on it. And I'm like, "No, honey, your dad is not Austin Coyle." Let's just get this straight. But anyways, this is all about my dad. And I know there's a guy in this room named Big Daddy. But my dad is my Big Daddy.
Well, I don't know how to follow any of these guys, I'll tell you. Between Darrell, he's my hero. But I want to thank everybody for coming out here tonight. This is quite an honor for me. I want to thank the committee for selecting me to the Drag Racing Hall of Fame 2015 edition. I'd really like to thank my wife of 57 years. And like Darrell said, she sacrificed a lot without the living room furniture for a couple years so we could go racing. And then when he raced, we had other issues. He had to buy a block one time, and so we missed going on a vacation. But she sacrificed and did everything she could. That's why she got the award tonight.
Daryl Gwynn, you called, can you hear me? I don't need that. You said I want a drink. I'm like your master. I get you a drink, I run up here, because I love you, your mom and dad, your wife. Years ago, you and I was at Darlington. That's when I met Bill Schultz. You were on your way to the championship and then the crash in England. I'll get to you, Denzi. They'll wait. Lock the doors. Lock the doors. IHRA will let me cuss. NHRA won't. I'm sorry, Graham. I'll get a letter tomorrow. It's okay. And then you crashed. And it was the most emotional thing in my life. And I'm screaming, and then Draw appears, and your mom and all the ladies. And all I said was, if I run low ET, I'll give all my money to Draw. In those days, $1,500 was like $1 million. Baton Rouge, I ran low ET, and I had to give up that check.
Now, Butch Leo, the California Flash, when he raced, Pro Stock was quite a bit different. These cars are much lighter than Butch's car, and Butch actually drove cars that were built by the factory. These are all special cars, special tubing frames, plastic bodies. You know, they are the last word in technology. Where actually what Butch Leo was driving was cars that he physically modified to be able to race.
Because I don't know Butch on a personal level, I had to do some digging. I reached out to my good friends Bob Fry, Bob Glidden, and a number of other people, and a common theme was that Butch is a world-class BSer. We all know the California Flash's accolades, so if I listed them, we'd be here all night. But something that stood out to me as a fellow Pro Stock racer is that Butch was the first driver in Pro Stock to run in the 8s and the 7s in a 5-year period. Now, if you think about that, that's a full second and 20-plus mile-per-hour gains for the class. I've raced Pro Stock for a little over a decade now, and we've only improved 0.3 and maybe 10 miles an hour. So what he did for the class was huge.
Well, Erica, I can't believe how wonderful that was. The BS part was just a little shaky, but I'd like to thank Donna Garlitz called me and told me that I was going to be inducted, and Don left me a message, I gotta say, on my cell phone. It said, I can't hear either. It said, Daddy, give me a call. And I'm thinking, who in the hell is that? So I have it on my phone, and a couple of days later I pull it back up and I hear big. I went, I can figure this one out. So I called Don, and he said, it's your turn, buddy. And I went, thank you. And I can't tell you how much I love to hear that from him.
It's time for this week's Quarter Mile Quiz presented by ARP. Melissa from Denver, Colorado wants to know, how many runs can a crankshaft make before it is replaced? And we'll have the answer after the break. ask Jack Beckman with this week's ARP quarter-mile quiz answer.
You know, it used to be about 8, then we shortened it to a quarter mile, then we got some more. Now the crew chiefs are wearing them out again, so 8, 10 is probably pushing it.
Our next inductee is Bob Moravez.
A match race booking and a borrowed engine led to Moravez first driving the Peters and Frank twin Chevy in 1961. The successful pairing of car and driver went on to win top gas at the 62 March meet. That's when Bob's father, an old school European, decided Bob's racing career had gone far enough. He said, "You've already accomplished what only 2 or 3% of drivers do in a lifetime, and you should now get down to work and help run the family appliance business." So Bob quit for a while. He continued going to the drags as a crew member with Peters and Frank and watched other drivers such as Mickey Thompson, Craig Breedlove, and Bill Alexander struggle to get the big twin down the track. Finally, in December 1962, Bob had seen enough and climbed back in the Lions, breaking the top gas record by 4 miles an hour. Bob went to drag news and track officials, warning them that the only way this would work was never to use his name. Later that year, Pete Robinson challenged Peters and Frank for the drag news #1 gas spot at San Gabriel Dragway. As the cars pushed down, announcer Mel Reck started to introduce the drivers and caught himself. A young drag news reporter named Steve Gibbs was in the tower and remembered he had a college textbook by Lippincott. That seemed innocuous enough, and between the two of them, they came up with the rest, and Floyd J. Lippincott Jr. was born.
At the race at Irwindale Drag Strip that Greg talked about, Steve Gibbs and Mel Reck came up with the name of Floyd Lippincott Jr., and it stuck. That's when Floyd was born. Floyd was a really good driver, let me tell you. He won many races plus 6 national events. I've only won 3. In fact, NHRA liked him so much they gave him his own official unlimited driver's license. Can you imagine that? You know, he's like a brother to me, maybe even closer.
Bill Schultz. Now there's a name dear to my heart. You know, back when I raced in the 80s, I thought he was the smartest guy in drag racing. And then one day I got a little Yorkshire Terrier. Not this one, it's been a long time ago, but one looked just like it. And this was the smartest little dog I had ever seen. And so I named him Schultz, after Bill Schultz.
Well, this is a new deal for me talking, so we'll see what happens. I thought being one of the last guys around that I would be able to figure out what was going on by what the other guy said, but I don't see any common thread going through the whole thing. So I do have one question to ask Don. He and I both knew for years that he had a dog named Schultz. And what I'm wondering about is, do you name him after Sergeant Schultz or do you name him after me?
Yes, I did.
Well, that's not an answer.
I thought you were the smartest crew chief in drag racing, and that Yorkie was the smartest Yorkie I ever put my hands on.
Thank you very much.
This edition of Inside Drag Racing is being brought to you by ARP, the world leader in racing fastener technology. Race Gas, get more out of your engine. Custom Auto Sound, the originator of classic car OEM fit radio since 1977. And by Steel Rubber, quality crafted rubber parts and weather stripping. Our next inductee is Jess Van Deventer.
Back in the late 50s and early 60s, a lot of the Midwest and East Coast drag racers would come to Southern California in the wintertime because they couldn't race back east and on the Midwest. But the first thing they want to do when they got to Mexico or to San Diego was go down to Tijuana, and probably the bullfights and the dog track and the floor shows and probably the floor shows. But anyway, they all would go down to Tijuana. And unbeknownst to any of us, Jesse went to Tijuana, but he took his B-modified Roadster and went down there to drag race. Now that also is unheard of. Never did say his, when he came back across the Border Patrol asked him, do you have anything to declare? And Jesse said, damn right, I won the race. And he said, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Are you bringing anything back across the border? And Jesse said, geez, I hope not. You know, and there were times when the Mexican Border Patrol wouldn't let the race cars, if they liked it, it didn't come back to the United States. But Jesse going to Tijuana with a race car was also unheard of. But the day that he came down his street driving that George Hurst 1962 Pontiac Grand Prix was really a big day for every drag racer in San Diego. And we all took pride in that win, in that car, and his championship, because he was one of our guys. He was one of us.
But I think the biggest thrill was when we won the Pontiac, and I had the opportunity to drive it all the way home. Today, you win money, and in those days, to win a car was really something. I really enjoyed that during that period of time.
This was a life that we lived to be like the great ones. Larson, the ones in this room. I only had the nerve to tell these stories. All of you have done it and lived it. It's from every one of you. I don't care if you're the preacher of the group, you've done it. It's what we did. And we loved every minute, didn't we, Dinsmore? And he took a bum like me with the great Austin Coyle, and we fought our way out of the love, out of the dream, to hope we could come to a banquet someday and be honored. It was awesome. And now is your time, Dincy, because to be a champion, I was lucky to have a legend wrote about me. Because if they don't write about you, nobody knows who you are. And that's the way it works. So for the Founders Award, I want to introduce my best friend along with Airwood and all of you. And I love you with all my heart. And one day, God will have a reason why this all happened. Come on up, Dinzy. God bless you.
Really tonight, I want to accept this award on behalf of the three people who help perpetuate the myth that I have any PR skills at all, because I was never trained in PR. I was just a rider who happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right people. But Steve Airwood, my best friend for 40 years, Joe Shirk, who after Steve bought Rockingham Dragway, I traveled with Joe for 15 years, and he's now in Seattle fighting Alzheimer's. So, and Elon Warner, who one of my greatest accomplishments was after 5 years convincing Force to hire him to manage JFR public relations into the future. He probably extended my career 10 years and shortened my life by 15.
Thanks for joining us, and be sure to check out an inside look at the Drag Racing Hall of Fame in Ocala, Florida next week.